The rain hammered against the windows of La Bernardin, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, as I stood under the awning, watching my reflection in the glass door. 6 months of chemotherapy had stolen 40 pounds from my frame, along with every strand of my once thick auburn hair. The woman staring back at me looked nothing like Sarah Chen, the tech executive who used to command boardrooms and close million-dollar deals over lunch. I adjusted the silk scarf around my head, a gift from my sister Emma, and checked my phone one more time. 7:58 p.m. The reservation was for 8 Taos, and I could already see them through the window. My husband Mark, my business partner David, my sister Emma, and 3 other close friends, all seated at our usual table by the corner window. They were laughing, wine glasses already filled, the warm glow of the restaurant making everything look like a painting. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle, not from the cold October rain, but from something deeper. For 6 months, I'd been fighting cancer in private, telling everyone I was on a sabbatical in Southeast Asia, finding myself, after the stress of launching our latest app. Only my oncologist, Dr. Martinez, knew the truth. I'd spent those months in treatment, in hospital rooms, in the lonely hours of recovery. Tonight was supposed to be my triumphant return, my 35th birthday, my victory over cancer, my reunion with the people I loved most. But standing there, watching them laugh without me, I hesitated. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you coming in?" A young couple stood behind me, politely waiting. "Yes, sorry," I mumbled, pulling open the heavy door. The maître d', Philippe, who had known me for years, looked right through me as I approached his podium. "Good evening, madame. Do you have a reservation?" The words caught in my throat. Philippe had served me here at least twice a month for the past 5 years. He knew my favorite wine, always saved table 7 when I called last minute, and never failed to ask about my latest business ventures. Now his eyes showed no recognition whatsoever. I'm with the Chen party, table by the window." He scanned his list, frowning. "I show that party as complete. 7 guests all arrived. There must be a mistake. I'm Sarah Chen. It's my birthday dinner." Felipe's perfectly composed expression flickered with confusion. He glanced toward the table, then back at me. "I apologize, but Mr. Chen didn't mention expecting an 8th guest. Perhaps I could seat you at the bar while I check with the party?" The words hit me like physical blows. Mr. Chen. My husband was Mr. Chen now, and I was a stranger trying to crash my own birthday dinner. "No, that's fine. I'll just go over." I walked toward the table, each step feeling like a mile. The restaurant's usual buzz seemed muffled, as if I were underwater. My Louboutins, the same red-soled heels I'd worn to our IPO celebration, clicked against the marble floor, but no one looked up. As I approached, I could hear David telling one of his stories about a disastrous pitch meeting. And then the investor actually asked if our app could read people's minds. I swear Sarah would have... He stopped mid-sentence, finally noticing me standing beside the table. 7 faces turned toward me. My husband, my sister, my best friends, all looking at me with the polite but distant expressions reserved for strangers. "Can we help you?" Mark asked, his voice courteous but cool. Those same brown eyes that had looked at me with such fear and love. The night before my first chemo treatment now held nothing but mild curiosity. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, forced a smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say happy birthday to Sarah." Emma tilted her head, studying me with the analytical gaze she usually reserved for her psychology patients. "That's very kind, but do we know you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Did they know me? Did anyone really know the person I'd become these past 6 months? The warrior who'd faced down mortality? The patient who'd learned to find joy in small victories like keeping down a meal or walking to the corner without exhaustion? "I heard she's traveling," I said quietly, testing the lie I'd fed them. "Southeast Asia, right?" "Yeah, the lucky brat," laughed Melissa, my college roommate, raising her glass. "Bailed on her own birthday to go find herself in Thailand or wherever. Classic Sarah, always dramatic." They all laughed, that familiar sound that had once meant home to me. Mark added, "She video called this morning from some beach. Said she'd be back next month." The video call. I'd pre-recorded it weeks ago, when I still had enough hair to wear a convincing wig. My tech skills finally put to use for the ultimate deception. "Well," I said, my voice steadier now, "I hope she's having a wonderful birthday, wherever she is." I turned to leave, but David's voice stopped me. "Wait, how did you know it was Sarah's birthday? And that she was traveling?" My mind raced. I follow her on Instagram. She posted about it. Another lie to add to the pile. "That's weird," Emma interjected, her therapist instincts clearly activated. "Sarah hasn't posted anything in months. She said she was doing a digital detox. The table fell silent, all of them now looking at me with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. This wasn't how I'd imagined this going. In my chemotherapy-fueled fantasies, I'd walk in, they'd recognize me despite the changes, and we'd have a tearful, joyful reunion. Reality, as always, was messier. You're right, I admitted. I'm sorry for the confusion. I must have mixed things up. I started to back away, but Mark stood up. No, wait. There's something. He stepped closer, his eyes searching my face. For a moment, my heart soared. He would know me. After 12 years together, surely he would see past the missing hair, the gaunt cheeks, the pallor that no amount of makeup could fully hide. You look familiar, he said slowly. Have we met before? The irony almost made me laugh. We'd met at a conference in Boston. He'd spilled coffee on my laptop, insisted on buying me a new one, and ended up taking me to dinner to apologize. We'd talked until the restaurant closed, then walked the common until sunrise. He'd said he knew from that first night that he'd marry me. Now he couldn't even place my face. I have one of those faces, I said, the words tasting bitter. People always think they know me from somewhere. He nodded, still looking puzzled, but sat back down. The conversation resumed, awkwardly at first, then with growing enthusiasm as they returned to their stories and wine. I stood there for another moment, invisible again, watching the life I'd built continue without me. That's when I made my decision. Actually, I said louder this time, I'd love to join you for a drink, if that's okay. To toast Sarah, even in absentia. They exchanged glances. The kind of wordless communication that happens in close-knit groups when deciding whether to include a stranger. It was Emma who finally nodded. Sure, why not? I'll get you a chair. She flagged down a waiter, and within minutes I was seated at my own birthday dinner, a stranger among the people I loved most. So, Melissa asked, pouring me a glass of wine from the bottle on the table, the 2015 Barolo I'd introduced them all to on my 30th birthday. How do you know, Sarah? Exactly. I took a sip of wine, letting the familiar taste ground me. We met during her treatment, I said, deciding to weave truth into the fiction. We were in the same support group. The table went still. David's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Mark's face drained of color. What treatment? Emma asked, her voice sharp. What are you talking about? I'd made a mistake. In my exhaustion, my emotion, I'd let the truth slip through. But looking at their faces, the confusion, the dawning fear, I realized I couldn't walk it back now. I thought you knew, I said quietly. About the cancer. The word landed like a bomb. Melissa's wine glass slipped from her hand, sending Barolo spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Emma was on her feet, her face flushed. That's not funny, she said, her voice shaking. That's a sick joke. Sarah is traveling. She's fine. She called this morning. From a beach in Thailand, I finished. Pre-recorded 6 weeks ago, before she lost the rest of her hair. Mark's face had gone from white to red. Who the hell are you? I reached into my purse and pulled out my driver's license, sliding it across the table. The photo showed me from a year ago. Healthy, smiling, unmistakably the Sarah they remembered. They passed it around in stunned silence, looking from the photo to me and back again. No, Emma whispered. No, you would have told me. I'm your sister. You tell me everything. I couldn't, I said, tears finally breaking free. I couldn't watch you all go through it with me. The treatments, the sickness, the fear. I thought if I could just get through it alone, come back when I was better. Better? Mark's voice cracked. Sarah, my God, look at you. You're half the size you were. Your hair. How could you do this? How could you lie to me for 6 months? The restaurant seemed to spin around us. Other diners were starting to stare at our table, at the spilled wine, at Emma crying, at Mark gripping the edge of the table like he might collapse. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. I'm sorry. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. I fled toward the restroom, my heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that matched my racing heart. Behind me, I could hear chairs scraping, voices calling my name. My real name now. Not ma'am or miss, but Sarah. I locked myself in a stall and leaned against the door, my whole body shaking. This wasn't the reunion I'd planned. In my mind, revealing myself would be controlled, gentle. I'd explain everything calmly. They'd understand my reasons, and we'd move forward together. Instead, I'd ambush them with the truth, shattering 6 months of carefully constructed lies in a matter of minutes. A knock on the stall door made me jump. Sarah? Emma's voice, thick with tears. Sarah, please open the door. I can't, I whispered. I'm not ready. You're never going to be ready, she said. That's not how this works. But we're here now. We know now. So please just let me see my sister. I unlocked the door slowly. Emma stood there, mascara streaming down her cheeks, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Without a word, she pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt my fragile ribs. "You stupid, stupid woman," she sobbed into my shoulder. "How could you think we wouldn't want to be there? How could you think you had to do this alone?" "I didn't want you to see me weak," I admitted, my own tears soaking her silk blouse. "I didn't want to be a burden." She pulled back, gripping my shoulders, and looked me straight in the eye. "You're my sister, my only sister. You could never be a burden. God, Sarah, what if something had happened and we didn't even know?" "But nothing did happen," I said. "I'm okay." The last scan was clear. "I'm in remission." "Remission?" She repeated the word like she was tasting it. "How long?" 2 weeks. That's why I came tonight. I wanted to celebrate with everyone, but then Felipe didn't recognize me, and I panicked, and she pulled me close again. "We need to go back out there." Mark is devastated. David looks like he's going to be sick. And I'm pretty sure Melissa is about to hunt down your oncologist and give them a piece of her mind for keeping this secret. Despite everything, I laughed. A watery, broken sound, but real. Dr. Martinez is going to love that. She kept telling me to tell you all. Smart woman. Come on. Emma kept her arm around me as we walked back to the table. The others had moved to a private room. Philippe, apparently recognizing the drama unfolding, had discreetly relocated them. They sat in shell-shocked silence, the abandoned birthday cake on the table like a mockery of celebration. Mark looked up as we entered, and I saw it all in his eyes. The hurt, the anger, the relief, the love, all tangled together in a storm of emotion. 6 months, he said quietly. You went through 6 months of cancer treatment alone. Not alone, I corrected. I had Dr. Martinez, the nurses, the other patients. Strangers, he interrupted. You had strangers, while your husband was home, thinking you were finding yourself on some beach. The weight of what I'd done, not just to myself but to them, crashed over me. In trying to protect them from pain, I'd inflicted a different kind of wound entirely. Mark's hands shook as he poured himself another glass of wine, his wedding ring catching the light. The same ring I'd slipped onto his finger 5 years ago at our Central Park ceremony. The private dining room felt smaller now, the walls closing in with each passing second of silence. Did you ever think about how I'd feel? He asked, not looking at me. Lying next to an empty pillow every night. Thinking my wife was having some midlife crisis in Thailand while she was actually... His voice broke. While you were fighting for your life? David cleared his throat. Always the mediator in our business partnerships and apparently in our personal crises too. Maybe we should all take a breath. This is a lot to process. Process? Melissa's voice was sharp, her lawyer instincts kicking in. She lied to us for 6 months, David. She made us believe she was sipping cocktails on a beach while she was going through chemo. Do you have any idea how insane that is? I sank into the chair Emma had pulled out for me, feeling every one of the 25 radiation sessions in my bones. I know how it sounds. No, Mark interrupted, finally meeting my eyes. I don't think you do. Do you remember what you said to me the night before you left? You said you needed space to figure out who you were outside of our marriage, outside of the company. You said you felt suffocated. The words hung in the air like an accusation. I remembered that night perfectly, how I'd practiced the lie in the mirror, how I'd made myself sound just selfish enough that he wouldn't follow me, just convincing enough that he'd believe I needed this journey of self-discovery. I didn't mean any of it, I whispered. Then why say it? His voice cracked with pain. Why make me spend 6 months wondering if our marriage was falling apart? I went to therapy, Sarah. I read self-help books. I blamed myself for not seeing how unhappy you were. Emma squeezed my hand under the table, but I pulled away. I didn't deserve comfort. Not yet. The diagnosis came the same week we closed the Series B funding. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. Remember how we celebrated? That champagne at the plaza? They nodded, the memory flickering across their faces. Our startup's biggest victory. The culmination of 3 years of grinding work. The next morning, I woke up with a lump in my neck. I thought it was just stress, maybe a swollen gland. But it didn't go away. I touched the spot unconsciously, where the lymph node had betrayed me. Dr. Martinez called with the biopsy results while you were all at the investor celebration dinner, the one I missed because of my migraine. Hodgkin's lymphoma, Emma said quietly, her medical training filling in the blanks. Stage 2B. It had spread to my chest but hadn't crossed the diaphragm. The clinical words felt strange in my mouth. Dr. Martinez said the prognosis was good, 85% cure rate with aggressive treatment. But aggressive meant 6 months of ABVD chemotherapy, possible radiation, and no guarantees. David leaned forward, his analytical mind working through the timeline. That was May 15th. You left for your trip on May 22nd. 1 week, Mark said, disbelief coloring his words. You had 1 week to process a cancer diagnosis and decided the best thing to do was lie to everyone who loved you? What was I supposed to do? The question exploded out of me. Months of pent-up justification finally finding voice. Walk into the office and announce that the CEO had cancer, watch our stock price tank, see the pity in everyone's eyes. Have you all rearranged your lives around my treatment schedule? Yes! Mark slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. That's what people do when they love each other. They show up. I didn't want you to see me like that, I shot back, my carefully constructed composure finally cracking. Do you have any idea what chemotherapy does to a person? I threw up every day for weeks. I couldn't walk to the bathroom without help. I lost control of my body in ways I can't even describe. Was I supposed to subject you to that? You subjected us to worse, Emma said quietly. You subjected us to not knowing, to not being there, to believing you were choosing to be away from us. The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. In my hospital bed, during those long nights when the nausea was so bad I wanted to die, I'd convinced myself I was being noble, protecting them, being strong. The first round almost killed me, I admitted, the words tumbling out now. I had an allergic reaction to the bleomycin, my lungs filled with fluid. I spent a week in the ICU on a ventilator. I saw Mark's face go white. I wrote you all letters just in case. They're in my apartment, in the safe. Jesus Christ, Sarah. Melissa buried her face in her hands. You almost died and we didn't even know? But I didn't die, I said, trying to salvage something from this disaster. I switched protocols, did 5 more months of treatment. The last scan showed no evidence of disease. I won. You won, Mark repeated, his voice hollow. Congratulations. You beat cancer and destroyed your marriage in the process. The words hit like a slap. Mark, no! He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need to get out of here. I can't do this right now. Mark, please. I reached for him, but he stepped back as if my touch might burn him. 6 months, Sarah. For 6 months, I thought I was losing you to some midlife crisis. I thought maybe you'd met someone else. I actually had myself tested for STDs because I thought that's why you left. His laugh was bitter, broken. Turns out I was losing you to cancer instead, and you didn't think I deserved to know. He walked out, the door closing behind him with a quiet click that sounded like an ending. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stared at his empty chair, at the glass of wine he'd left behind, at the wedding ring he'd been twisting around his finger all night. He'll come around, David said finally, though he didn't sound convinced. He just needs time to process. Like we all do, Melissa added. She looked older somehow, the laugh lines around her eyes deeper. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. I nodded, though honesty felt like a foreign concept now. Were you ever planning to tell us? If the treatment hadn't worked, if you were dying, would you have just disappeared? The question I'd asked myself 1,000 times in those dark hospital hours. I don't know, I admitted. I told myself I would come back when I was cured, but every time I thought about it, about explaining everything, it felt impossible. The lie had gotten too big. So, what changed? Emma asked. Why tonight? I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Because I'm an idiot who thought I could walk into my own birthday dinner and everything would magically work out. Because I'm tired of being alone. Because I missed you all so much it physically hurt, worse than any chemo side effect. You did this to yourself, Melissa pointed out, but her voice had lost its sharp edge. I know. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. A real one this time. Not the fake migraines I'd used as excuses. I know I did. But knowing that doesn't make it easier. Philippe appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable. I apologize for interrupting, but the restaurant will be closing soon. Should I have the cake boxed? We all looked at the untouched birthday cake. Happy 35th Sarah, written in elegant script across chocolate ganache. Another reminder of the celebration this was supposed to be. No, I said quietly. Thank you, Philippe, but no. He nodded and retreated, leaving us in our bubble of dysfunction. So what happens now? David asked, ever practical. With the company, I mean. The board doesn't know. The investors don't know. We've been telling everyone you're on sabbatical. Nothing changes, I said. I'm ready to come back to work. I've been keeping up with emails, reviewing the quarterly reports. My brain still works fine. But you don't look, he trailed off, gesturing vaguely at me. Like myself? I finished. No, I don't. But I'm still capable of running our company. Maybe more capable, honestly. There's nothing like facing mortality to clarify your priorities. And what are your priorities now? Emma asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. For 6 months, my only priority had been survival, making it through the next treatment, the next scan, the next day. But now, fixing what I broke, I said finally. If that's even possible. It's possible, Emma said firmly, but it's going to take time. And therapy. Lots of therapy. I've been seeing someone, I admitted. Dr. Patel at the Cancer Center. She specializes in, well, in people like me. People who try to go through this alone. What does she say about what you did? Melissa asked, her lawyer's instincts still active. I smiled ruefully. That I have control issues and a martyr complex. That I'm so used to being the strong one, the successful one, that I couldn't handle being vulnerable. That I'd rather lie to everyone I love than admit I needed help. Sounds about right, David muttered. She also said, I continued, that it's not uncommon. Cancer patients who hide their diagnosis, who push people away. It's a form of control when everything else feels out of control. That's not an excuse, Emma said gently. No, I agreed. It's not. It's just context. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the evening settling over us like a shroud. Outside, I could hear Manhattan going about its Friday night business. Sirens, car horns, the distant sound of laughter from people whose lives hadn't just imploded. I should go, I said finally. Check on Mark. He's probably at Jimmy's, David offered. That's where he went most nights when you were gone. Jimmy's brother went through lymphoma a few years ago. He was the only one Mark felt he could talk to about his fears. The irony wasn't lost on me. My husband had spent 6 months confiding in a bartender about his missing wife, finding comfort in someone else's cancer story, while I was living my own in secret. Thank you, I said, standing on unsteady legs, for listening, for not throwing wine in my face, which you'd have every right to do. The night's still young, Melissa said, but there was a hint of her old warmth in it. Emma stood too, grabbing her coat. I'm coming with you. Emma, no. Yes, her voice brooked no argument. You've been alone for 6 months. That ends now. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me. I wanted to protest, to insist I was fine on my own, but the truth was, I was exhausted. 6 months of being strong, of carrying this secret, of fighting my body's betrayal alone. I had nothing left. Okay, I whispered. David and Melissa stood too, an awkward moment where normally we'd all hug goodbye. But nothing about this was normal. We'll talk tomorrow, David said finally, about the company, about everything. Just get some rest, okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. As Emma and I stepped out into the October night, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming under the streetlights. The city looked different somehow, sharper, more real than it had in months. Jimmy's is 6 blocks, Emma said, linking her arm through mine. Think you can make it? 6 blocks, 6 months, 6 people who'd thought they'd lost me. I can make it, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. We walked in silence for a block before Emma spoke again. You know what the worst part is? What? I bought you a birthday present. A spa weekend in Vermont for when you got back from your trip. I thought you'd need to decompress after all that finding yourself. Despite everything, I laughed. A spa weekend sounds perfect, actually. Except I can't use hot tubs for another 6 months. Infection risk. Of course there's an infection risk, she muttered. Is there anything about cancer that isn't horrible? The parking, I said. What? At the Cancer Center. Amazing parking. Right up front, never have to circle the block. And the volunteers bring you warm blankets. She stopped walking, staring at me. You're making cancer jokes? Humor was all I had some days, I admitted. That and the morphine. Jesus, Sarah. We kept walking, our footsteps echoing off the wet pavement. Jimmy's neon sign glowed in the distance, a beacon of normalcy in what had become a surreal night. He's going to forgive you, Emma said suddenly. Mark, he loves you too much not to, but it's going to take time. What if he doesn't? Then you'll survive that too, she said simply. You just beat cancer. You can beat anything. But as we approached the bar, I saw Mark through the window, hunched over a whiskey, his wedding ring sitting on the bar beside his glass. And I wasn't so sure. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed with radiation or chemotherapy. Some cancers couldn't be cut out. I'd won my battle against lymphoma. The battle for my marriage had just begun. Jimmy's was exactly as I remembered it. Dim lighting, worn leather bar stools, and the comforting smell of whiskey and old wood. Mark sat at the far end of the bar, his back to the door, shoulders curved inward like he was protecting himself from the world. The wedding ring on the bar beside him caught the light. A small circle of gold that held 5 years of promises I'd shattered with 6 months of lies. You want me to go in with you? Emma asked, her hand tightening on my arm. No, I said. though every instinct screamed for the support. This is something I need to do alone, she nodded, understanding. I'll be at the coffee shop across the street, however long it takes. I pushed through the door, the familiar creak announcing my arrival. Jimmy looked up from polishing a glass, his eyes widening in recognition, or rather, lack of it, before something clicked. Sarah? His voice was uncertain. Jesus, is that really you? Mark's head snapped up at the sound of my name. In the mirror behind the bar, I saw his face cycle through emotions. Surprise, pain, anger, and something else I couldn't quite read. Hi, Jimmy, I managed, my voice smaller than intended. Mark said you were traveling? Jimmy said slowly, his eyes taking in my appearance with the practiced assessment of someone who'd seen his share of hard times. His brother's cancer, David had said. He knew what treatment looked like. I said, just not the kind of traveling everyone thought. Understanding dawned on his face. Ah, hell, he muttered. Then louder, you want the usual? Just water, please. I slid onto the stool beside Mark, careful to leave space between us. Up close, I could see the toll my absence had taken. New lines around his eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. He stared straight ahead, his whiskey untouched. How did you find me? He asked finally. David said you've been coming here. That Jimmy's brother... I trailed off, unsure how to finish. Had lymphoma. Yeah. He took a sip of whiskey. Ironic, isn't it? I spent months talking to him about his brother's treatment, trying to understand what it was like. Never imagining my own wife was going through the same thing 3 miles away. Mark, do you know what the worst part is? He turned to face me fully, and the raw pain in his eyes made me flinch. It's not that you lied. It's not even that you went through this alone. It's that you made me believe our marriage was failing. You made me think I'd done something wrong, that I'd driven you away. That was never... I went to couples therapy, he continued, his voice rising slightly. By myself. Do you know how pathetic that is? Sitting in Dr. Brennan's office, talking about my absent wife, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. She kept asking if there might be something else going on, if maybe you were dealing with depression or trauma. And I defended you. His laugh was bitter. I said no. Sarah just needed space. Sarah was just stressed from work. Sarah would never keep something important from me. Jimmy quietly placed a water in front of me and moved to the other end of the bar, giving us privacy. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words feeling utterly inadequate. Sorry. Mark repeated the word like he was testing its weight. My wife disappears for 6 months, nearly dies without telling me, and she's sorry. What else can I say? How about the truth? How about explaining why you thought so little of me, of us? That you couldn't trust me with this? I gripped the water glass, searching for words that might make sense of the senseless. The day I got the diagnosis, you were so happy. The funding had closed, the company was thriving, we were talking about starting a family. How was I supposed to walk into that happiness and destroy it? By being my partner, he said simply. By remembering that we promised for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Those weren't just pretty words, Sarah. They were vows. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided our marriage was only worth the better and the health. The minute things got hard, you ran. I didn't run, I protested. I stayed right here. I fought alone. The word exploded out of him, causing the few other patrons to glance our way. He lowered his voice. You fought alone. You made that choice for both of us. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To know that when you needed me most, you chose to push me away? I felt tears building but forced them back. I'd cried enough for myself these past months. I watched what my mom's cancer did to my dad, I said quietly. How it consumed him, aged him, how he stopped being her husband and became her caregiver. I didn't want that for us. Your mom's cancer was different, Mark said. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed terminal. You had one of the most treatable forms of cancer with an excellent prognosis. You can't compare them. I know that logically, I admitted. But lying in that hospital bed, hearing the word cancer, all I could think about was watching her waste away while my dad held her hand and pretended everything would be okay. I couldn't bear the thought of you looking at me the way he looked at her, like I was already gone. Mark's hand moved toward mine on the bar, then pulled back. So instead, you made yourself gone. You let me grieve a marriage that was still alive. I thought I was protecting you. From what? From loving my wife? From honoring the promises I made? He picked up his wedding ring, turning it over in his fingers. I've been carrying this in my pocket for 3 weeks. Couldn't wear it. Couldn't leave it at home. Do you know why? I shook my head. Because I didn't know what we were anymore. Married? Separated? I had no idea. My wife was supposedly finding herself on a beach somewhere, but she wouldn't answer my calls, barely responded to texts. What was I supposed to think? I'm so sorry, I said again, hating how hollow it sounded. Stop apologizing and help me understand, he pleaded. Walk me through it. The diagnosis, the decision, all of it. Make it make sense, because right now, nothing about this makes sense. So I did. I told him about the mammogram I'd scheduled as a routine check, how the tech had noticed the swollen lymph nodes, the biopsy, the waiting, the phone call that changed everything. I described the paralysis that had gripped me, the inability to form words that would shatter our carefully constructed life. I sat in the parking garage at Mount Sinai for 3 hours after that call, I said. I called you 4 times but hung up before it connected. What was I supposed to say? Hi, honey. Dinner's in the fridge, and by the way, I have cancer? Yes, he said simply. That's exactly what you should have said. And I would have left work, driven straight there, and held you while we figured out what to do next, together. I know that now. But that day, all I could think about was control. If I could control who knew, when they knew,